Kids, welcome to the DC Bridge or dot comma. Do a quick review. So D stands for dot and C stands for comma. It's going to connect things together. Here we go. We have an independent clause, a dot comma, and then another independent clause. The difference between two independent clauses and a period is those two independent clauses or sentences don't have to be related. In this case, when we have a dot comma, think of this as a little hook that's going to connect things together that have some type of a relationship. Let's take a look at our sentence. I ran track at the U of M. That's an independent clause. Then, if you look over at the second clause, my father ran track at Princeton. That's also an independent clause. Now, we put a dot comma here because they are related, track and track. Different schools, but the central theme is track and field. Let's go ahead and take a look at how you'd apply this to an actual ACT test question. The DC Bridge dot comma kids, let's take a look at practice problem number 31. First things first, when you look at your answer choices here, scan A through D, you see that we have a dot comma DC Bridge in B, but also in no change, you see that we have a period here. So what's the difference between the two? Independent clause, period, independent clause, just two sentences basically. Two sentences, you can talk about whatever you want. You can change from one subject to the next with a period. But if you put a dot comma means that the two sentences have some type of relationship. So we know for sure that both of these clauses here, the first part up to Murky and down to Europe, have to be independent clauses. If they both are, then they both could be correct. We could cross out the other two answer choices. If they're not, we can go ahead and cross both of them out simultaneously. Let's go ahead and do that. Step number 2 is to start with the beginning of the sentence and then read up to the first punctuation and label it independent or dependent. While the history of piñatas is somewhat murky, that is a dependent clause. Kids, why is that? You see that we have some sneaky words like while or as. These are called coordinating conjunctions. And when you throw those on an independent clause on the front, that's going to make it a dependent clause. Watch. If we were to just put our finger over the word while, let's take a look at the sentence. The history of piñatas is somewhat murky. That's independent. But because we put that coordinating conjunction on the front, that makes it a dependent clause. Right away, we don't even have to do anything further than that because we know right away that a period is violated because you can't put a dependent clause and then a period. Also, B is going to be crossed out right away because it's two independent clauses when you're dealing with a period and a dot comma. Well, and then what do? We move on to the next answer choice. It comes down to a comma or no comma. So let's go ahead and take a look at the punctuation. B, we'll trace it in here. Step number 2 is to trace in the punctuation. So we do that. Then what we do is we move on, read up to the comma and label it independent or dependent. We did that already. While coordinating conjunction makes this a dependent clause. Then the second part, most scholars believe that the piñata originated in China and later became popular in Europe. That's an independent clause. Right there, you see it. That is the abandoned boxcar, and we start with an introductory phrase here, dependent clause, comma, and then an independent clause after that. D is the correct answer. Now, why do I right away go to that when that works? Answer choice C, there is no punctuation there, so that means that what we have to do is we have to read from the beginning of the sentence to the end of the sentence, and in the beginning, when I looked at the sentence, I saw that the period was there at Europe, and the beginning of the sentence was there up at while. That means that we have to completely read from while all the way to Europe without taking any breath. So let's go ahead and try that. All right, ready? Watch. Do I feel like I'm running out of gas at the end of the sentence? Do I feel like I want to take a natural break there? Read the sentence and see, do you need to take a stop there? Ready? Here we go. While the history of the piñata is somewhat murky, most scholars believe that the piñata originated in China and later became popular in Europe. Did you see how I ran out of gas at the end there? That tells me right away I need some type of a break. Punctuation is an opportunity for you to take a quick breath. 31, the correct answer here is D. Let's take a look at another problem. It's problem 46. Step number 1 is to scan the answer choices and look for punctuation that's easy that we'd like to work with. Here we have an answer choice G. It's the DC bridge dot comma. So we already know that we need two independent clauses. Step number 2 is to trace in the punctuation in the underlined portion. Here's a dot comma. And in the non-underlined portion as well. Here's a comma here, and here is a comma here, and the period is down over here. All right, the next step is to go ahead and label. Here it says, if you've ever entered a contest of any sort, dependent clause, right away we can cross out answer choice G because we need two independent clauses. All right, then let's move on to the next punctuation. We could choose either F or J. Let's go ahead and pull F. F is a dash. So we know that Mr. Chung says we're going to have an independent clause, a dash, and then a dependent clause. That is no different than independent clause, abandoned boxcar, comma, and a dependent. The dependent should give you a miniature definition of the word right before the independent. At the end of the independent, right before the punctuation, it's either the dash or the comma. All right, we have a dependent clause here. And then now when you read over here, it says, you are well aware of the legal requirements. That's an independent clause. See how that's a reverse abandoned boxcar. All right. However, you could do that with a reverse Mr. Chung. Dependent dash independent. So we have two answer choices that are both correct. How do you know which one's which? If you look at the rest of the sentence, usually people will stick with the system that they have. So if you use one dash, usually one dash will be this clause to the period, but here we've got all these commas in here. So it makes sense to stick with commas instead of trying to mix it up. Does that make any sense there? We reduced it down to answer choice F and answer choice J. J is the correct answer. Now, just for fun, let's go ahead and take a look at why H is incorrect. H says that there's no punctuation there. All right. If you've ever entered a contest of any sort, you are well aware of the legal requirements. Did you see how I got clunky in there? I couldn't even read the whole thing without stopping. Watch, let's try it again. If you have ever entered a contest of any sort, you are well aware of the legal requirements. See, I can't even read the whole thing at one time, and I feel like I naturally need to take a break here. If you've ever entered a contest of any sort, you are well aware of legal requirements. You see how you need a break in there. H, it just doesn't feel normal for us to read the whole thing from start to finish. J is the correct answer.